Hey movie fans, now that the new Superman movie has been out for a little bit, we can take a look ahead to what's next for the Man of Steel, as this movie seems to be a good stepping stone for the greater DC universe. It seems like this movie is going to be enough of a success that we get more Superman stories, more DC stories, and that makes me very, very happy. Now, James Gunn has already started teasing what this next Superman project will be, but he hasn't fully revealed everything. Naturally. So today I'm going to give you my top 5 best theories / predictions for what I think this new mystery Superman project might be in the DC universe. But before we jump into it, I want to hear from you guys. What do you think the next Superman project will be? Will it be a straight up sequel? Will it be a crossover? Whatever your thoughts, let me know down in the comments below. Without further ado, let's kick us off with my number 5 best guess, and that is a straight up Superman 2, no strings attached, a straight Superman sequel. I put this at number 5 because judging by the comments that James Gunn has made, this does seem unlikely. It seems like whatever the next Superman project is, he will be crossing over with somebody else. Now, he has said it won't be Batman. That was my first and best guess right off the bat was, all right, we're going to get Superman and Batman this time. Not Batman versus Superman, but a Superman-Batman team-up movie, a world's finest, if you will, and I would love to see that someday. Maybe throw in Robin, and it could be a ton of fun, but it seems like it's not Batman related. Some fan on Threads or X or whatever social media platform James Gunn is actively on the most, someone asked him, all right, when can we get news on Superman 2? And he said, define Superman 2. So I don't think it's necessarily out of the realm of possibility that it's a straight sequel to Superman, but it seems the most out there. It seems like a crossover is in the cards to further solidify this DC universe as lived in and being inhabited with other characters. So if it is a crossover, what other characters could there be that he could potentially cross over with? My number 4 pick, and this is the only one that's on my list that is pure tinfoil hat conspiracy theory / wish fulfillment on my end. There's no actual logic or reasoning behind this pick, but it is my list. Dang it, let me have this. And that is a Superman Nightwing crossover movie. Let me have this. It is not happening, but let me have this. This is my list. Let me die happy. This will never happen. But, let me go crazy for a bit here. Would it be that crazy? Yes, it would be. But there might be a precedent for it. Superman and Nightwing have a long and storied history together. In fact, Superman is the first Nightwing in the comics. In one of the old comics from, I believe, the 60s, Superman and Jimmy Olsen, who is already in the universe and rumored to be getting his own spin-off show, wink wink, they get shrunken down and basically get trapped in the bottle city of Kandor, where Superman, I believe, doesn't have his Kryptonian powers, if I remember correctly. So him and Jimmy have to go under aliases, and they disguise themselves as Kryptonian heroes, Nightwing and Flamebird. So that's where the name Nightwing comes from originally in the comics, and then later on, when Dick goes off to be his own hero and abandons the Robin persona, he meets with Superman, who gives him the name Nightwing, basing it off of a Kryptonian legend, more or less keeping that in continuity. They are friends. It is often regarded that Superman is the good side of Dick's upbringing. Like, Batman was the cold, calculating, I need you to be the best of the best, and Superman is like the nurturing father figure. Granted, he's more like the fun uncle in this equation, but there's plenty of comics to pull from both Superman and Nightwing working together. Is this ridiculously out of left field and it's mainly just for me? Absolutely. Would it be absolutely bonkers for James Gunn to introduce a Batman side character before actually introducing Batman into this universe? Yes, but here's my bold prediction that I'm gonna actually say for the first time out loud now. I've never said this, but I'm going on record now. I think Nightwing shows up in the DC universe before Batman does. I think we will see Nightwing in some capacity before Brave and the Bold. Here's why. When James Gunn was teasing his DC universe before any of official announcements came out about like Superman Legacy or Swamp Thing or other projects that we'll talk about later, he shared a lot of pictures teasing things on his Instagram. One of them was Kingdom Come Superman, which is where we got the emblem from for his Superman movie. He teased Mr. Terrific, who would end up being in Superman. And pretty early on, he shared a picture from a cover of the Tom Taylor run of Nightwing. Nightwing was one of the first pictures that he shared on his Instagram. I think James Gunn has plans for Nightwing. Do I think we're getting a Superman Nightwing crossover? Realistically, no. But, like the boy who cried wolf, I refuse to let hope die. Let me have this one. I have rambled and raved about this long enough. Let's move on, shall we, for your sanity and mine. So at number 3, I'm going with another out of left field pick, but there might be a little bit more basis for this pick. And I think Superman might potentially cross over with the Legion of Superheroes. So basically, the Legion are a group of almost like Justice League type characters from way off in the future. They have a lot of crossover stories, particularly with a younger version of Superman, like a early days Superman / Superboy. But there's a long history of Superman and the Legion of Superheroes. In fact, he had like an animated TV show, I believe, in the early 2000s with the Legion of Superheroes. I don't think it would be out of the realm of possibility for James Gunn to play with various time periods in this universe. Like, go into the past. We've already seen, spoiler alert, we've already seen references to the Justice Society in the Hall of Justice. That's in the past. What if we know about teams in the future? But the big thing that kind of makes me go, well, we might be toying with the Legion of Superheroes and the future sooner rather than later, and it could set up other things, is when James Gunn announced his whole slate of projects in this phase 1, so to speak, the Gods and Monsters phase, one of the first projects that he announced was a Booster Gold TV show. You know who often has a lot of dealings with the Legion of Superhero and has a lot of like time travel stories? In fact, time travel is his whole thing, is Booster Gold. Could you use this Superman movie to set up the Booster Gold TV show, which is supposedly in development? We haven't heard a whole lot about it recently, but Booster Gold is supposedly out there. He's one of the most fan-requested characters in all of DC Universe, and I think he'll show up sooner rather than later, and I could absolutely see Superman being the character to introduce him to a wider audience, like he did with Mr. Terrific or Guy Gardner or Metamorpho. A lot of people are now interested in those characters, and I can see James Gunn wanting to do that for Booster Gold and the Legion of Superheroes. Now, my last two, I actually kind of firmly believe they're one of these two options here, but at number 2, I'm going with Superman and Supergirl. Once again, spoilers for Superman if you haven't seen it or if you just don't care. Supergirl shows up at the end and more or less claims Crypto back from Clark because technically Crypto is her dog, and it was a fun little scene. I'm glad it was in the movie itself and not in end credits. That way, when Supergirl comes out next year, because it is the next DC Universe movie that is coming out next summer, people already are kind of familiar with this version of Supergirl, and they didn't have to stay till the end credits to see basically what the next movie is. I think this would make a lot of sense. You have the two Kryptonian characters, and it could also further solidify Supergirl's spot in this universe. Plus, oh, just thinking about it gets me excited. If we have Superman and Supergirl, the last two living Kryptonians that we know of, assuming Zod and the rest of the people aren't out there, the last two Kryptonians finally facing off against Brainiac. We've been waiting for Brainiac forever, and actually, James Gunn did say in an interview recently with the Happy Sad podcast with Josh Horowitz, which was incredibly insightful. If you haven't checked that out, do so. It's a very good interview. But James Gunn said in that interview that he originally thought about doing Brainiac for this first Superman movie that we just got until he decided to go in a different direction. Brainiac has been like the forever bridesmaid of unmade DC projects. Fans have been wanting Brainiac forever, and I absolutely see James Gunn wanting to go down that road sometime in the not too distant future. And having the two Kryptonians do it, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It would just be a good partnership between cousins going up against the one villain fans have wanted to see for the longest time, but it would still keep the focus squarely on Superman while not inherently being a Superman 2, so to speak. It would just be a continuation of that story. Makes a whole lot of sense to me. It's the one that I see the most people going, yeah, a Superman and Supergirl crossover. However, there's one other project that I think I would put a little bit more stock in because it was a project that was actually announced at that opening slate that James Gunn has talked about and has not made any noise since that announcement. And I think James Gunn is kind of consolidating projects. What I mean is Superman crossing over with the Authority. So when James Gunn announced the slate of projects for Gods and Monsters, one of the first titles he announced was The Authority, based on the Wildstorm comics. In fact, one of the characters that's in The Authority, the engineer, is a main character in the Superman movie. There has been no chatter online or about what's happening with The Authority. There's rumors that it got turned into an animated project, or the script isn't coming along as well as I thought. I'm wondering if James Gunn is folding that into the next Superman project. Why would that make sense? Because Superman and The Authority is a really popular comic run written by Grant Morrison, and we've already seen James Gunn really be a big fan of Grant Morrison's comic book writing. He took heavy inspiration from Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman for this new Superman movie. He's a big fan of Grant Morrison. I 100% see him taking the Superman and The Authority run that Grant did and just kind of doing a movie version of that. I think there's a reason we haven't heard about The Authority. Whatever project that is, whether it's getting turned into an animated or it's getting folded into a potential Superman crossover. That way, James Gunn can elevate The Authority, like I said earlier, like he did with Mr. Terrific and Metamorpho. Use Superman to elevate characters that people might not be familiar about. Now, granted, The Authority probably leans more into the R-rated territory, which is definitely up James Gunn's alley with like the Suicide Squad and such. But it's the one option that I'm not seeing a whole lot of people talk about that I'm actually kind of buying into. I can really see a Superman and the Authority angle, especially if we're continuing that trend of what Superman was, of kind of Kingdom Come-esque, of new, bright, optimistic superhero, kind of tells the older, more cynical regime how to be heroes again. And there's no more cynical and hard-edged heroes out there than the Authority. That crossover makes all the sense in the world to me, continues to explore the DC universe while not necessarily pushing the big-name characters just yet. Yeah, we know we're getting Batman, we're getting Wonder Woman, but James Gunn has also reinforced the fact that he wants to do the more obscure characters, and I can see him using the bigger name characters to bolster those people. So that's my picks. I think one of them could be a straight up sequel. One of them could be a Nightwing crossover because, oh, please let it be that. It could also just be a Legion of Superheroes crossover. It could be a crossover Supergirl. But the one that if I had to wager money, and I'm not a betting man, but Superman crossing over with that unannounced or undeveloped Authority project might have been folded into something else. But what do you guys think? What do you think the next Superman movie will be? Will it be a direct sequel? Will it be a crossover? Whatever your thoughts, let me know down in the comments below as I hear from you guys. And as always, if you like what you see and want to see more, subscribe to the channel. And as always, stay sharp, movie guys and gals.